free to argue. Want to spend some time today talking about the austerity measures that are being talked about in the House. And I wanted to spend some time talking about what's always left out. Specifically, I wanted to talk about the fact that it's always referred to as non-military cuts to the budget. And I think it's interesting at a time when lots of people are going to face the uncomfortable choice between either paying higher taxes or getting reductions in services that they've received from the government that they've grown to rely on, and the removal of which will actually decrease their standard of living. But the one thing that we can't talk about is what is arguably the most bloated part of our budget. So, if you look at our military budget, and this is just like what people can pin down. I mean, there's certainly more to it that's, off the record books. But as far as like what people can pin down, we spend as much on our military as the rest of the world put together. So, starting from that point, I think it's very hard to argue that the military shouldn't be part of the austerity of the rest of the country. I mean, why should they be excluded? Why shouldn't there be a reduction in our enormous and completely overfunded military? Why shouldn't we be doing that before putting the scalpel to domestic programs that frequently do have tangible benefits for people? I mean, what you're talking about is like removing law enforcement people from the streets. You're talking about kicking kids off of, school lunch programs. You're talking about, people not getting medical procedures that they need. So, if these are the kinds of things that you're talking about as consequences of the cuts for domestic programs, then why can't we bleed the military at all? Why can't we cut down on our operations? Why can't the military be pay as you go? In other words, when you look at especially the Republicans, but I mean, I think everybody's kind of buying into this logic now, that you need to establish the benefits of a program and show that monetarily it's worth it for us to engage in. Well, where is the monetary justification for our enormously bloated military? I just don't see it. I mean, what are we going to look to? Afghanistan? Afghanistan, who after a decade of our attention, there's no evidence that the people or the government are any better off for involvement. I mean, Iraq isn't doing very well either. But I mean, even if the countries were doing a lot better than they are, I mean, what is the benefit to the American people? Why should we be paying for any of this? I mean, what in a practical, meaningful sense, every bit as practical and meaningful as kids not getting food they need, people not getting medical procedures they need, how does that impact us? Now, even if you want to say that what we're trying to do is prevent another 9/11, okay. Well, I got a couple of problems with that. First of all, I don't think it's doing that. I think it's actually more likely to cause another 9/11 than to prevent one. But let's even assume that premise for a moment. Let's assume that us ramping down our military increases the chance of us having another 9/11. Okay. Look at the amount of money, the amount of resource, the amount of manpower that we devote to this ostensible goal of preventing a 9/11 type occurrence, do you honestly feel that A, any amount of money will really prevent a 9/11 occurrence if someone is truly bent on it, and B, that there is no more effective way to spend that money? So let's say we take on the liability of having a 9/11 type event occurring in the country, every couple of years. Now, I don't mean to belittle this. I mean, people who watch my channel know that I don't mean to belittle the horrific power of an event like this. But there are 9/11s everywhere you look, if you care to look at them that way. I mean, the problem of homelessness and hunger in America is a 9/11. People die because they're homeless. People die from hunger. People, die from any number of preventable causes in the country, of which a 9/11 event is one highly unlikely source. I think it's time to have a dialogue. And I mean, people are ready for this. There was a poll that came out, I think it was a CBS News poll, and I'll link to it, that talked about, people are given the choices between cutting the military and cutting like Medicare or Social Security. You give them a choice like that and they will choose the military. This is not to say that you listen to the mob about everything, but I mean, I think people are ready to have a conversation. People are ready to say, well, I want to be secure, but I don't have to be crazy secure. I don't have to have 4 times as many nuclear weapons as anybody else. I don't have to have, another class of military hardware that's above and beyond what everybody else has. Because it costs too much, and we can't afford it, and we don't really get anything for it. So, as you hear about these austerity measures, as you hear about how bad our deficit is and how much needs to be cut, spend some time thinking about all the sacred cows. Spend some time thinking about the things that nobody ever talks about cutting, even though they are, I think, the most reasonable things to cut. The things which don't confer any benefits, which don't leave behind, structures and institutions that other people can be a part of and that will benefit society. It's just a drain. And certainly anything above and beyond what we need in the strictest sense to protect ourselves, simply a waste of money. Like Eisenhower said, I mean, it's every dollar you spend is thieving from another thing that you can be doing. And the fact that we're going to take a crutch away from an old man or tell a kid that they have to go hungry so that we can keep some retarded piece of military hardware, I find that offensive. And I think we need to be telling our officials that. I think we need to engage them in town hall meetings and make them say, look, what are the benefits to me of this policy? I want you to explain them in a way that's meaningful to me, that makes me care about the fact that my standard of living is getting worse so that we can fund these things. But anyway, this has been Zach Elliott, and you can certainly feel free to argue. Interested in hearing what people have to say about this. Leave me a comment.